inafanya mtu a complain mahali. Una earn so much.
So let's start sasa. Where from the last time where we stopped. So we were looking at lookup functions, and before even looking at that, we were looking at Excel formulas, Excel functions, and how you can use them. So if I can recall very well, in our last class, we were talking how you can make use of the various aggregate functions. So the likes of count ifs, count, average ifs, sum ifs, all of them we talked about. So I believe you still remember about them. So today we are going to learn about lookup functions. And we will deal mostly with the ones that we normally use on a day-on-day basis. So today we'll touch on VLOOKUP. Tomorrow we'll touch on the index and match function so that we understand how you can use it to actually analyze your data or to come up with very comprehensive reports. So I'm aware you come across the VLOOKUP function, and it's one of the functions that is very common among Excel users. So if you go to any sector or any industry, you'll find people using the VLOOKUP function, which is actually very powerful. So you can't claim to know Excel if you haven't used the VLOOKUP function. So that was the way suggests the V stand for vertical. So you are looking just on columns. When you hear of HLOOKUP, HLOOKUP looks at horizontal data, but VLOOKUP, it looks at data vertically. So this is a reference function. So it's a reference in that it's just a way of trying to retrieve information from another source, and that source in our case could be from another worksheet or from another workbook. So I'll show you here. Let me just present screen so that I can show you. My screen is visible enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me reduce the size of this so that you can see the whole view. So this is a typical contact center data set. It's just a sample data set of 500 rows. So whenever you are analyzing data in Excel, you might be having agent information in different sheets. Maybe you could have sheet 1 containing now the agent details. That is, for instance, their first name, their second name, their agent ID, maybe even their QID, shift ID, and so on. So this is basically the personal information, for instance, that belongs to each agent. Then you could have another sheet that has other information regarding maybe a particular agent or so. And then you could have several sheets. So this is, I'm assuming this is data that is in different sources. And the goal here is to bring this data in one sheet so that you can analyze it as one. So that even when you decide to use the pivot tables, I think pivot tables, we had discussed it in our last sessions, so that you can be able to have this in one source. For ease of analysis, you might be forced to use a reference function, such as the VLOOKUP or the XLOOKUP, or even the index and match function. So in our case here, you can see in column A, we have the agent ID. Column B is the agent name. That's agent 1, agent 2. I just give them those names. And then you have the QID, and then the shift ID, the team ID, the status ID, and maybe even their salaries, for example. So what we are doing is, when you look at other sheets, let's say sheet 2. So in sheet 2, it's a sheet that contains queues. So we have QID, the queue name, and the channel. Remember, in our agent data, here, we have the QID. But if we want to retrieve, for instance, for each agent, now the queue name and the channel, we can be able to do that using the VLOOKUP function. So we have the QID here, and when we look at the agent's data, we have a column for QID for all these 500 agents. So we can be able to retrieve the queue name for each of these agents, given that we have a common denominator in both sheets. So when you look at the column C in the agent's data, and when we look at column A in the queues sheet, we can be able to see we have queue ID and what they represent. So apart from queue name, we can also be able to know whether each agent, whether he was on chats or whether that agent was on calls. That information is here. So whether the agent was on calls, chats, or even email. So we can be able to retrieve that information using the VLOOKUP function. So we'll see the syntax for the VLOOKUP function, and now you can be able to apply it to achieve this goal. So our main aim here in column H is to retrieve the queue name from the queues sheet. And the way we can do that is simply type is equals to VLOOKUP is equals to VLOOKUP. So when you just type VLOOKUP, there's this pop-up that will come. Simply double click on it. So you'll see VLOOKUP function there. And then it brings you the syntax. The syntax is the rows. So it is essential for you to understand the order or what the VLOOKUP is doing. So understanding the arguments is very important. So in our case here, we have the lookup value. So the question we are asking ourselves here is, what are we looking for? And then we have the table array. So in the table array argument, we should ask ourselves, where are we looking at? So the value that we are looking at, where is it found? That is the table array argument. And then we have the column index number. So in the table array, that is where the source is. What we are looking for, where is its column index? Is it in column 1, column 2, column 3, or index 1, index 2, or index 3? And then the other argument is, now, are we looking for an exact match or an approximate match? So if you are looking for an exact match, you simply type in 0 or false. If you are looking for an approximate match, you simply type in 1 or you type just true. So that means you are just looking for a value that is close to what you are looking for. So in our case here, we are looking at the Q name. We are looking at now the QID. That will be the lookup value. So the QID is here. The QID is here. Then the QID is our lookup value. And then our table array refers to where we are looking. Where is the source? So we'll come to the Q sheet and highlight. And I taught you how to use the dollar signs in locking cells or in locking columns to make them absolute but not relative. So this is the source. When you see AC, that is the range from column A till C is where the source is. So we are looking at the Q name. So in the source data, what do we want to return? So between the range A, B, C, where our data source is, the specific column index where our result can be found is which number? So in our case, it is column B, which is index 2. And then we are looking for an exact match this way. Then simply close the bracket, press enter. So that means agent 1 here, or agent ID A0001 was on email. I'll handle emails again. So when we want for agent 2, agent 3, agent 4, we simply autofill this and everything else will be filled in. So from that, what have we been able to achieve? We've been able to achieve the Q name for all the 500 agents that we have from this sheet. Then in the channel, we can also do the same for channel. For channel, we'll say is equals to VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP. Then remember, what is the common denominator between the agent's data and the queue's data is the QID. So we'll reference this QID, which is cell C2. So in cell C2, I put a $sign before C to make it now, not to lock it, but to make it move downwards vertically. And then let me just put a comma. And then we will now select the table array. So the table array is here. Table array is AC still. AC. Then I will put a comma. And then we'll decide now the channel, which column is it found in our source data. So in our source data, channel is column index 3. So we'll simply put 3, and then we'll do an exact match, and then we do it that way. Don't know why it's giving me ML. Okay, it's common. It's common between the two. Okay. So we now know the channels which its agent handled. Yeah. So that is it regarding the VLOOKUP. So I want us to try to retrieve the shift name which each agent was working from the shift queue. So I'll give you room for all of us to try. We'll begin with Olivia's, and then we'll go to Agnes, how we can retrieve the shift name and even the shift start time. So let me just highlight what we have in the sheet. So in the shift sheet, we have the shift ID, we have the shift name, we have the shift start time, and also we have the shift end time. So we want to use this information here. So the common denominator in the two sheets is the shift ID. Shift ID. So we want to use that. We want to use that to retrieve the shift name, even the shift start time, and the shift end time. So let us try. Let's translate our Olivia. We see how we can.
Okay. All right. Equals VLOOKUP.
Okay.
Shift ID, D2. Yes, $sign before that, comma. We go to our shift, the table array A to D, locate.
Okay.
Comma. So we want the shift name, that's column B. We select column B. That's number 2, sorry. So it's the second index.
Okay.
then I believe here is false again because we want the exact data, correct?
Yes.
So we can use false or 0, then close the
Yes.
bracket.
Yes. Well done. So the shift name for agent 1 is 6 a.m. So I've just out of fill for us to fill for other agents as well. So shift start time. We go Agnes.
Okay, is equals to VLOOKUP. And then the shift ID. And then you lock the D.
Okay.
And then you go to the table, comma, sorry. And then there's the table, you copy of it. And
Okay.
then lock. And then comma, it's start time, it's 3, C3. So it's 3.
Okay, nice.
And then 0, no false. And then kufunga and then enter.
Well done. So the shift start time for agent 1 is 6. That's nice. So I see we've gotten the concept very well. So let us do for end time. It's equals to VLOOKUP. We do it together, me included.
Okay.
Okay. Right.
Okay, is equals to
VLOOKUP shift ID.
And then lock the letters.
Okay.
Yeah. Comma. Go to shifts. Select the table array.
And then 4.
Comma. Oh yes, you lock again. Yeah, that should be column 4.
Then 0.
4. Ebu use 0. Close. Enter.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes, it works.
So when do I use true?
True, the way Excel is programmed, when you're using VLOOKUP, it can be exactly approximate match, but not the exact. If exact is there, it will bring. But if we have something
What if I combine? What if I combine the false and the true?
No.
Let's say use 0 now 1. Can I combine them?
No. The syntax does not allow.
Italeta error. Ebu combine. Ebu ongeza hapo.
Haiwezi. Unasema to try. You've entered so many arguments for this function.
Okay. Tunaichanganya.
So you play by the rules.
Okay.
Yeah, because that is how it was structured. So when you go out of the rules, then you'll get errors. Yeah, so let us continue to fill this table. Team name. On team name, we have a sheet called teams. We have team ID, team name, and supervisor. So the common thing here, we have team ID in column E, and on teams sheet, column A, we have what? We have team ID as well So let us now retrieve the team name for each agent.
Okay, Fred, before Tendele, I have a question. What
Yes.
if you don't lock and use the space?
You don't lock the columns, right?
Yeah, like use the is equals to. Now, after you click, like for example, QID, it's a comma and then space and then the other sheet and then comma and then space and then like for example 2, then comma 0 and then
You can try and say. So you're saying, let's try with this.
we
We
look up
have
and then click on
so
the
team
team.
ID.
Yes, you don't lock, use a comma. No. After E2, use a comma.
Okay, we separate with commas each argument. Okay.
Yeah, and then you space.
I space like this. Mhm.
Yes. Then the other sheet, the teams one, you highlight and then comma. No, you don't lock still. And then space. Then it's 2. Then comma, then 0. And then close. No, there's a space between 2 and 0.
It will still work, but I don't recommend you putting spaces.
Okay.
Why?
You know, it will it might bring problems when, for instance, you are doing data cleaning. You have to remove those extra spaces that you've put. So for me to be sure that it is referencing the correct data source, and for me to be sure the cells are not moving or the color hasn't changed, I normally this. So that's it. Yes, let's go for supervisor.
Is equals to VLOOKUP.
Is equals to VLOOKUP.
Then status ID. No. Shift ID.
We are looking at the team because supervisor is in the team sheet. And the
Oh,
common thing is team ID. So we go to teams. And
then
so
3.
which column are we referring to?
3.
Yes, supervisor for agent 1 is Paul Mwangi. For other agents as well, you can be able to fill through. So you see now, instead of you looking at it manually, VLOOKUP has helped you to retrieve this information. Let's go to status name. So we have status ID here, and we have the status sheet here. So we have the status name, whether the agent was active, ST on leave, ST03 staff, or ST04 toil. So what we do here is we will come to just do a VLOOKUP. It's equals to VLOOKUP, and then we'll go to status ID,
Yeah.
and then we will go to status sheet.
Log.
So which column are we referring to?
Two.
Bah.
So active agents, active, staff of, toil. So we got all the statuses for all the agents. So I believe Meshika, how to use the VLOOKUP functions. So how can we know now the calls, the AHT, the CSAT for each agent? We have this performance sheet where it has agent ID, and on the agent's data sheet, we have agent ID. Can we be able to know the calls AHT and CSAT?
Yeah.
So let's say is equals to VLOOKUP. So we have
Agent ID.
ID. So we just put it this way. So I'll go to performance sheet.
So we want to know the number of calls
Handled.
calls handled. So that's 2. Zero close.
So the first agent handled 51 calls. So it is just the dummy data, though it indicates calls, and we could find from doing emails, which you might question. So is equals to VLOOKUP. We are doing NHT. So VLOOKUP, what are we referring to here?
Agent ID.
Okay. So with agent ID. So we NHT, then we'll go to column index.
3.
Also 0.
0 close. Sorry.
Now that's nice. So let us do the last one for CSAT. Is equals to VLOOKUP.
Agent ID.
Agent ID.
Lock it up. Comma. Table array.
Okay. Then column index.
Oh. Wonderful.
So what have you now learned is that from this data that is in different sheets, use sheet, teams, status, performance, we have brought that data into one sheet. Si ndio hivyo? So we can now even analyze it from here now. We can either do pivot tables and all those stuffs to even build now reports. That's how powerful VLOOKUP is in enabling you to bring data together from different sheets. So apart from that, the VLOOKUP, I want to teach you now how to handle the errors that sometimes might arise when you are using VLOOKUP.
Agi, can you hear Fred? I don't know if it's my internet or Fred's.
I can hear you, Olivia. You can't hear me?
Sorry, I can hear you well.
Yeah. Hope I'm audible enough. So, in the queues sheet, I have just erased Q01. Q01, I have intentionally cleared or deleted the inbound queue. So for QID 001, where is it? So QID 001, when I've done that, you see it's giving me 0 because this was inbound. Because of the rest, it's giving me 0. So this is something maybe you do not want to see. So it could either maybe give me a 0 or an MA error. So when VLOOKUP doesn't find the value that you are looking for, it can bring you either an NA error or just bring a 0 or just bring you an ref error. So ref means the reference is invalid. NA, it means what you are looking for is not in the source data. So understand those ref errors or the errors that actually arise whenever you are using the VLOOKUP. So it's not VLOOKUP alone, even other functions, when you are using them, you can be able to get errors. So how do we handle those errors? We have a function called the if error. So the if error, for instance, if that value is not found, if you have the NA error, you specify now what should it output instead of throwing that NA error. So we can now implement, for instance, here by introducing the if error. So if, for instance, in our data source, there is no that value, we can just tell our Excel to maybe give a 0 or maybe just return a blank if that value isn't found. So I'll put now you can see the if error argument syntax. So the first option is the value. So if this formula evaluates a value, then I'll get that out. But if it throws an error, we now specify by default, if it's an error, give us maybe this value or give us this. So we can say if we get an error, we can just let it give us a blank. And if this, so for instance, if we were getting here, maybe we have ns, not a 0. If it could be bringing ns, here now we could be getting blanks. But here you see we are getting 0, 0, 0, 0. So we can use VLOOKUP twice. So let me undo. So we can say if this function evaluates to 0, if it evaluates to 0, we want to get a blank. So remember, I should use the if function here. So the if function, which is something that we'll come to discuss later, is a logical function that lets you bring in conditions or constraints into your argument. So if this formula evaluates to 0, we want Excel to give us a blank. Or if it doesn't evaluate to 0, then return just the result. So if it doesn't return a 0, give us this result. Let me copy this. So we've put the argument value if false and value if true. So the first argument, when we said if this function evaluates to 0, give us a blank. Otherwise, give us the exact value. So can paste this here. So having done that, can press enter. So here is the formula, the whole of it. So hope you've seen the change. Where we were getting 0, now we are getting blank. And it is because we've set the default that if that formula evaluates to 0, give us a blank. Otherwise, give us the value itself. Hope I've understood it.
No.
Olivia?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not complicating anything, but I'm just telling you how you can go about various scenarios. So the concept of VLOOKUP already you know, and we've done it together. So we are just looking at now what if now you are getting maybe zeros? What if now you are getting NA errors? What can you do? So let me return inbound here. So let me introduce another queue here. Let me say Q5. Hope you are seeing what I was talking about. Eh? So
Yeah.
Q5 is not on the agent skills sheet. That tells you that VLOOKUP has tried to look for Q5 in this sheet, but it has not found it. That is why it is throwing this NA error. These NA errors that you are seeing. Yeah. So NA means no value found. So it has looked in the Q sheet here, and it has not found U5. So I'm sure when you are analyzing your data, you don't want to see these NA errors, right? You
Yeah.
don't want to see these NAs. So,
No.
or so what NA, I've told you what NA means. So NA means try to look for the value, but we haven't found it. That's why we are getting NA. Yes, even if we are getting this NA, we want it to output something else. Like, for instance, if there is no value found, we just set by default. If that evaluates to an error, which is NA, just state that not found, or just give a blank. You getting it? So we can come here and add another condition. Say, if that evaluates to an error, so we are putting now if error now. So if this evaluates to an error, so value if error, just say not found. See, now we've combined if error in this formula, and you can see what's doing. So yes, the value is not there. So instead of it giving us NA, acha kidogo nisotue mtoi. We Mesh, hebu chukua huyu mtoi. Ah, okay, so let's continue. Let's continue. So I was telling you, instead of it throwing the NA error, we can design it by default. Give us maybe a value, for instance, not found. So it can be anything. It can either be a blank, whatever you decide. So we can do a blank, and we will get a blank here instead of it giving us an NA error. So here again on channel, you see we are getting an NA error, right? So we can wrap the if error function with the VLOOKUP function for us to not get this NA error, right? So kindly note that the if error function can be wrapped with any function, not only the VLOOKUP function. If error can be wrapped with any Excel formula, so that by default, it gives us a value if that formula evaluates to an error. So let's do the same for channel. Because we have an NA here, we want to, by default, to return a default value. So we'll put if error, comma. So if an error, we want maybe to return, let's say, channel not found. Channel not found. Like that. So you see, instead of just giving us NA, it's giving us channel not found. That is because on the Q sheet, we do not have Q5. Meshika.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's how we handle errors whenever we are dealing with these formulas. Be it VLOOKUP, be it index and match, be it XLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, all of those formulas, that's how we handle them. So that if error is applicable, to just give us a default value if we are getting errors. So
Yes.
yeah, so I think the concept is just the same. The concept is just the same. Even if we want to introduce another shift here, let's say S04, which is not there, or I'm introducing it at the wrong place. So maybe shift, where is it shift? Instead of S03, say we have S04. So you see now, you see what has happened. Here we are getting NS, 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 just because S04 is not on the shift sheet. So we need to wrap it up so that by default, we get maybe a certain value or a certain character or a certain name. So we can just wrap it by putting if error. If we get an NA, and then remember to put a comma here, and then the value. Let's put a blank this time, just like that. So we are getting blanks here. And then put if error here. If error, put another if error. So one trick is, if error, if you've written a very complicated formula, just put it after you've written the formula. So do it last. So if error, we want it to bring a blank like that. So that's how it is. So you see, now we are getting plus instead of NS. Yes, hopefully we've understood how to go about the errors, the NA errors, and if a value evaluates to 0, you can also use the if function. And here you can see we've nested the if error, and the VLOOKUP together to achieve a common goal. So you will understand more about the use of these logical functions. So if is a logical function. So it is applied in conditional statements. So, and it is very powerful whenever you are working with data in Excel. You've seen how we've combined this just in one formula. 3 functions, one formula. So that's the power of understanding what each function does, and how you can match them to achieve a given objective. Yeah, so that brings us to the end, unless there is any question or comment on the same. I would like to stop there. And a bit. It was slow.